All right, welcome to the November 12th Complete Streets Commission meeting. This is a teleconference meeting with the Complete Streets Commission members, city staff, and members of the public participating remotely to ensure proper social distancing in this federal, state, and local emergency. I would like to introduce Complete Streets Commission members and staff that are present. I am Vice Chair Lydia Lee. Commissioners present include Katie Baruzzi, Patrice Espinoza, Mike Meyer, Bill Kirsch, and Isaac Wyatt. Commissioners who are absent include John Cromie, Jackie Sebrian, and Dina Levin, who is the normal chair. Staff who are present include Kevin Chen, Judy Heron, and Patrick Palmer. Patrick, would you please provide instructions to the Complete Streets Commission and members of the public on how the meeting will proceed?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Co-Chair Lee and members of the Complete Streets Commission. Welcome everyone to the November 12th meeting of the Complete Streets Commission, and thank you for attending. At this time, we ask the members of the commission to please remain on screen for the duration of the meeting. You will control your own webcams and microphones. Staff will engage webcams and microphones to make presentations and respond to the members of the commission. For members of the public who are in attendance and wish to provide public comment, after the chair calls for public comment on the item you wish to speak on, please engage the raised hand feature. I will then have the ability to open your microphone and you can provide your public comment to the Complete Streets Commission. If you do not have a working microphone, just please type your comment into the chat feature and staff will read it out loud. That concludes the instructions and I return the meeting to the vice chair. Thank you.
Great. Okay, under reports and announcements, staff and commission members may communicate general information of interest regarding matters within the jurisdiction of the commission. No commission discussion or action can occur on any of the presented items. So now I'm going to ask Kevin for any reports and announcements. Under regular business, the commission, wait, do I continue down there, Kevin? Or do I wait for you to launch into reports and announcements?
Yes, I just have one quick announcement. So
Okay.
If the vice chair can bear with me real quick. I just wanted to inform the commission that the city council was able to listen to the item with regard to staff resources. With that being said, however, specifically pertaining to the transportation division and the request for 2 additional transportation staff members, that particular aspect of the item was tabled, and it will likely, given the amount of work that the city council will be having for the next couple of meetings, we are anticipating that particular item is going to get potentially picked up again by early next year, so most likely January. So I just wanted to let the commission know that that's sort of the latest development on that item. And with that, I will conclude my reports and announcements.
Okay. Under regular business, the commission considers recommendations from city staff on policy matters or administrative actions that require commission approval. So the next thing is to approve the Complete Streets Commission regular meetings minutes of October 14th. Do we have any comments, changes? Bill?
There's an item, I'd have to go back to the minutes, but a member of the public spoke about difficulty with implementing speed controls and bike lanes on a city street. I just thought they should add that was Cambridge Avenue, that resident was talking about. That's where he lives. Remember that item, Kevin?
I do, and I can go ahead and take that as an amendment to the minutes.
Actually, on the same line, I could be this is being totally pedantic, but I thought he was talking about adding sidewalks. Am I misremembering that?
Well, no, he was mainly interested in slowing traffic because he and his family live just, maybe 50 feet from El Camino Real on Cambridge, and people
Right.
turn onto Cambridge and they speed until they get to that first speed bump.
Right.
wanted traffic calming before that.
Okay.
And then also he wanted bike lanes. And
Okay.
he can't get the city to move on it.
I must be remembering there was like some other petition on Cambridge Avenue at some point that people wanted to add sidewalks, that I'm remembering something
Let
different.
me ask you what, maybe this is not the right time, but I believe the developer on that, on the subject project that's before planning, right there on Cambridge at El Camino, they're gonna have they've designed in a raised crosswalk across the bridge. Is that true?
Yes, so that was part of the 201 El Camino Real development project. So I believe that particular project did go through the city council and got final approval.
And did that raised crosswalk get final approval?
Yeah, so it was part of the project as well. So yes, it did.
That's fabulous because the city should do that all over town, raised crosswalks. I don't know how that got through, but that's fantastic.
It was one of the improvements recommended by the project. So it was overall one of the, I guess it would be community benefits, not officially, but one of the benefits of the project.
Kevin, the city should communicate that to that resident, that raised crosswalk has been approved. That could be a traffic calming item, potentially.
Yes, we have. So it's an ongoing discussion, but we have informed that particular resident of that development right there.
Last question, how much raised is that crosswalk?
I think because of the fact that we want to make sure that the fire trucks and larger trucks in general can go through, it's probably no more than 3.5 inches or maybe 4 inches. I'll have to go back and look at the specs specifically, but it wouldn't be much taller than that if at all. Just given we want to make sure that the larger trucks can safely go over it without creating too much discomfort.
Enough to slow car traffic?
Definitely, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, thanks.
All right, any other comments on the minutes from last time?
If not, I would make a motion to approve them with the amendment that Bill suggested.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All right. All right, all those in favor? All those against? Kevin, did you get that?
Yes, I got it. Thank you very much.
All right, so next up is D2, which is review of commission/committee policies and procedures, roles and responsibilities. Judy Herron, City Clerk, is going to introduce the item.
Thank you, Vice Chair Lee. And just going back to the minutes, we do need to announce the vote, just so
okay.
all parties who can hear and see that the minutes passed unanimously. And so just going forward after the vote, just always announce. Lucky you have the City Clerk here, right?
Right. Thank you for keeping me on track.
Thank you all. I'm going to share my screen here, confirming that everyone is able to see the presentation.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. So again, hello, I'm Judy Herron. I am the City Clerk for the City of Menlo Park. And I truly just want to appreciate all of you for giving me some time on your agenda to review the Commission Committee policy and procedures, roles and responsibilities today. Attached to the agenda is the City Council procedure number CC 19-0004, which was adopted by the City Council on March 5th, 2019. Today, I want to review with you all what is an advisory body work plan, the scope of authority of the advisory body, roles and responsibilities of the chair, and then we'll follow up with any questions that you may have. So all of Menlo Park's commissions and committees, with the exception of the Planning Commission, are advisory in nature. So that term advisory in nature, what does it mean? The purpose of advisory bodies is to invite appointed community members to lend their valuable expertise to the City Council's current priorities. The City Council is the policymaking body, and the primary role of the advisory body is to provide judicious and thoughtful advice to the City Council. Here are a couple of examples of how advisory bodies can help in achieving City Council priorities. Advisory bodies can hear public testimony on the City Council's behalf, and that's typically done through public comments or public hearings during meetings. The advisory body can study referred matters and return recommendations and advice to the City Council. Advisory bodies can forward those recommendations to the City Council for its consideration. And this is done through advisory body work plan or work plan amendments that best align with City Council priorities. Now, there may be times when the advisory body's recommendations will not be sustained or will be modified by the City Council. It's important for you to remember that this is not a rejection of the integrity of the recommendation, but it's just part of the process of community making decisions. Next, we're going to be reviewing the work plan. The City Council provides direction to staff through their priority setting process. The City Council actions and directions ultimately lay the foundation for all the work to be expected to be accomplished in that particular period. Similarly, each advisory body is required to develop an annual work plan that supports those priorities that are set by the City Council. Here's a brief overview of the work plan process. So advisory bodies are to develop an annual work plan, which is the foundation of the work performed by the advisory body in support of City Council priorities. The body must approve the work plan by a majority vote, and the work plan must formally be presented to the City Council for feedback and approval by September 30th of each year. Now, in light of the COVID-19 delay and the reactivation timeline of all advisory body meetings, this year, the City Council received an information item with the status of each work plan, which provides more time for each advisory body to bring their work plan to the City Council. And finally, there is a required quarterly report out, which is typically done by the chair. Next, I would like to provide a little bit of clarity on the scope of authority. Advisory bodies are not involved in the administration or operation of city departments. This means members may not direct staff to initiate programs and may not conduct major studies or establish policy unless specifically stated in their City Council approved work plan. So what is the staff liaison's role? The staff liaison serves as the primary point of contact and resource for the advisory body. Their general tasks include providing a schedule of meetings, informing the advisory body on directions and priorities of the City Council, informing the body of events, activities, policies, or programs occurring within the scope of the City Council approved work plan, ensuring that agenda items approved by the advisory body are brought forth in a timely manner, always taking into consideration City Council priorities and work plan. And finally, take action minutes. Next, we'll be discussing the roles and responsibility of the chair. The chair is the presiding officer of the advisory body and is charged with preserving the order and the decorum at meetings. The chair will facilitate the involvement of all members of the advisory body and at the same time allow for adequate public participation. The chair can also limit members to the question under discussion and refrain the body from commenting or entering into conversations with speakers during public comments or during public hearings until all speakers have been heard. Ways to do this would be to hold off on members' questions or comments until the public comment period has been closed, and refrain discussions between members and the public during meetings, whether these are written or verbal. And finally, in the absence of the chair, the vice chair shall act as the presiding officer. So in closing, the relationship of the advisory body members and staff is active, continuous, and nuanced. Both members and staff are motivated by the shared goal of furthering the city's best interests and assisting in achieving City Council priorities. So at this time, I have concluded my presentation I am happy to take public comment at this time, or if there's any clarifying questions that any member of the commission has, be happy to try and answer those as well.
Okay, Bill.
Judy, I read the staff report, and I think the staff report included the actual city verbiage about roles of commissions. And there was one item in there that talked about the commission being able to advise the city council of something outside of the work plan. And I didn't see that in your report, but I remember reading it just, I don't know, 30 minutes ago before I got on the meeting here, that it looked like there was some opportunity periodically for the commission to recommend something, a project, something outside of the work plan. Is that true? I saw it written in that staff report.
Thank you, Commissioner Kirsch, for your question. It is true that the commission can always return to the city council with a requested project or a requested program. However, it would have to be done through a work plan amendment. So you can either do that at that quarterly report out. You can ask to either add or modify the work plan at that time. Or if you wanted to do it before that quarterly or after that quarterly report, you can come to the city council at any time and amend that work plan and add a program or a project to it. As for projects outside of the work plan, it would have to, unfortunately, it would have to be on the work plan.
It would have to be on something on the work plan. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Or amend the work plan. Okay, thank you.
Correct. Yes, you can always amend the work plan.
Thanks.
Okay, other questions for Judy? All right, should we go ahead and take public comment on this then? Patrick, do we have any public comment?
At this time, it doesn't look like it. For anyone that might have joined us, I'll just run through this really quick again. For any other members of the public who are in attendance, and if you do wish to provide public comment, after the chair calls for public comment you wish to speak on, please engage the raised hand feature. I will then have the ability to open your microphone and you can provide your public comment. And also, if you do not have a working microphone, you can type your comment into the chat feature and staff will read it out loud. But at this time, I do not think we have any hands raised.
Actually, I'm not making public comment, obviously, but I realized, do we not have a standard public comment period in this agenda?
Oh,
I can actually touch on that,
Okay,
Commissioner Baruzzi, because this is a special meeting. General public comment is removed from the agenda, and so
Okay.
members of the public can comment on agenda items only. And that's true for all advisory bodies and city council and planning commission.
okay, thanks.
I had a question. Judy, here's the language that I was referring to. It says under policies and procedures, it says, upon its own initiative, the commission shall identify and raise issues to the city council's attention, and from time to time explore pertinent matters and make recommendations to the city council. That doesn't sound like, it sounds like something of our own initiative we can bring to the city council.
And again, you can bring any initiative to the city council, but in order to have staff work on that and have the commission work on it, it does need to be approved by the city council.
Yeah, this wouldn't be something necessarily that, I'm just thinking back to if we had a plan, some sort of draft plan of, say, a segment of road that we wanted improved, and we could present that to the city council and say, this is something we'd like the city council to consider. We're not asking for resources. We're asking city council to consider it, and then they can do what they want with it. It may or may not be within the work plan, but it sounds like to me here that we could do that. And it could be something outside of the work plan. As long as we're not asking for resources, we're just asking city council to consider it.
Yes, thank you for clarifying, Commissioner Kirsch. That is correct. If there was something that the commission wanted the city council to either prioritize or consider, you can go to the city council either as a body, like I said, through your quarterly report out, or staff, Chen could also work on getting that item on a city council agenda. And then separately from that, you can ask those things of the city council through public comment as just a resident. But if you wanted it to be a commission request, then my recommendation would be either at that report out, that's quarterly, or working with staff Chen to get that on a city council agenda so the chair can propose that to the city council.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, if there are no further clarifying questions, we should discuss as a commission now. Okay. I'm waiting for thoughts.
Well,
Yes.
I just, that was my thought. It appears to me that if there's something, a segment of road, let's say, for example, Middle Avenue from El Camino to Olive, and then from, Olive to Hillview, if we had a draft plan that we wanted the council to consider, I don't know if that's within our plan, but it sounds to me like we could take it to council through through liaison Chen, or through through our chair or vice chair. We could take it to city council and ask them to consider that plan.
I mean, from what I remember of our past workings in the past years, it seems like the work plan is usually general enough to allow things that come up like that are specific, which I think is part of why the work plan is a little bit ambiguous sometimes, just because we don't know exactly what's going to come up. But Judy, does that sound in line with what you know of commission operations?
Yes, very much so, Vice Chair Lee.
I bring it up because, in my particular subcommittee, the whole idea is that, we're trying to get the city to build out a safe network for cycling and pedestrians. And it appears the only way we can do that is to kind of cobble that network together, road segment by road segment. And when Commissioner Weiner, ex-Commissioner Weiner was with us, that's what we did. And we were successful in getting the Oak Grove University segment put together, but yeah, I think it's been difficult to get any traction since then.
Judy?
So yes, thank you, Vice Chair Lee. So Commissioner Kirsch, my recommendation for this instance and any future instance, you're working with the subcommittee, and I do believe subcommittees have, agendized report outs. So I think it would behoove you in the subcommittee, as well as the entirety of the Complete Streets Commission, to try and get those agendized on your agendas, so you guys can talk about that, come to some sort of accord, and then that way you can approve the chair to bring that to the city council, because those would kind of be the steps. You'd have your subcommittee kind of do that, the legwork, you'd present it to the entirety of the advisory body, get the advisory body's approval, and then from there have the chair report that out to the city council for their consideration.
Thank you, Judy. Would it only be the only opportunity to present it to council would be through the quarterly report by the chair, or could the commission say, Commissioner Kirsch, you may go to public comment with city council and report it as a commission item? Present something as backed by the commission during public comment.
Correct. So the public comment period is strictly for members of the public to make comment. You can't speak on behalf of the advisory body during public comment. However, we do have an agenda setting, or heading rather. It's called commission reports. It's not just for that quarterly report out. You could you could ask the chair to do a report out in February, and it has, like I said, it might have to do with what your subcommittee had suggested, and you approved it by the entirety of this body, and then ask the chair to report it to the city council. And the chair could then speak on behalf of the entire advisory body under that commission report heading. So it does not only need to be during the quarterly report out. It can happen when we can, after obviously your body has approved it and we're able to get it onto a city council agenda.
So is there an opportunity at every city council meeting for a commission update or commission report out?
I mean, yes, the short answer is yes. However, given the amount of items our city council agendas are currently facing, it will take some time to get it scheduled. If
And-
that,
Okay, I understood. Can only the chair or vice chair, could the chair nominate another commissioner to report out?
of course, whatever the advisory body approves can
Okay.
be fine.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, do we have any other thoughts on the, what is this item called again? Commission policies and procedures and roles and responsibilities as presented by Judy Heron? All right, okay, Kevin, I might need your help a little bit on this. So what is the commission supposed to be doing at this time? Do we just say, are we just voting to approve?
I believe this is just a informational item in this case. Judy can feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we need any action per se. If there's no additional feedback or questions for Judy, we can move on to the next item.
Yes, that is correct. No action is required at this time.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Judy, for presenting that. Next, we're going to move to D3, which is discuss and consider potential multimodal study metrics to incorporate into the next transportation impact analysis guidelines update, which is quite a mouthful. And Kevin Chen, Senior Transportation Engineer, is going to enlighten us all and introduce the item.
Thank you, Vice Chair Lee. Not sure about enlightening, but I will try my best. Bear with me for a sec here. I do have a short presentation with some hopefully helpful slides. So give me 1 second here. Okay. Just wanted to make sure that everyone can see my screen okay. Hello?
Yes.
Can I give one feedback? Okay, great. Thank you very much. Sorry, I can't see what when I'm presenting, I can't see the what you guys are seeing. So needed that verbal feedback. So thank you. So again, Kevin Chen, Senior Transportation Engineer. Tonight's item really is what I would consider sort of the beginning of an endeavor, if you will. The title of it is to consider potential multimodal study metrics to incorporate into the next transportation impact analysis guidelines update. Again, according to the Vice Chair, it's definitely a mouthful. So I'm going to go ahead and go into some of the details to hopefully provide some context for the Commission here. So just a bit of information about our transportation impact analysis guidelines. I believe at the beginning of this year, the city as a whole, we went through a process of updating our TIA guideline. The purpose of that particular update was to be in compliance with the state law. The state law, for those that might be interested in the topic or know a little bit about the topic, in the past, the state of California essentially looked at transportation environmental impact in terms of congestion. So many of you know the term level of service. So prior to July of this year, when a development project or a capital project that requires the environmental study, and of course, by environmental study, they would study noise, agriculture, and of course, transportation being one of them, prior to July 1st, level of service was the study metrics. Of course, with the new state laws, Senate bill, that's no longer the case. So instead of level of service, the state had asked essentially jurisdictions to look at vehicle miles travel instead of level of service. So in response to that, the city went through the process of updating our TIA guidelines, and that came to the commission earlier this year and was ultimately adopted by the city council in June. Now, I wanted to briefly touch upon what the TIA guideline is really all about. So again, we're assuming a project that requires the process. So of course, if you go through the TIA guideline and it is readily available online, you will see that there are some exemptions that depending on the size of the project, generally the smaller projects, you might need to go through that process. But in this case, we're assuming that you are a non-exempt project. So what that means when you are required to do a study, a transportation impact study, you would then look at our guidelines and try to determine what exactly would need to be studied in order to satisfy our requirements. And so if you look at the TIA guidelines, there are essentially two main components. One is called vehicle miles travel. And again, hopefully what I've stated earlier kind of makes sense, is that this is really a state requirement. So any project that needs to go through this process, vehicle miles travel is what the state is looking for. It's a measure of total travel distance by that project. So for instance, if you are a residential project, then what you are measuring essentially is how many miles being traveled by that project. So let's say you are a resident, you are a future resident of that project. On a daily basis, you go to your Starbucks to grab a cup of coffee, drop off your kids at school, and on your way to work, after a hard day of work, you come back, pick up your kids, maybe stop by your local favorite restaurant, pick up some food for dinner. All of that travel right there, that on that day, is being captured and being measured. So when you're saying that you measure VMT, vehicle miles travel, what you're saying is that you're measuring the total miles travel, the average total mile travel by that development on a daily basis. And of course, with VMT also comes level of service. Now, as I mentioned earlier, even though level of service is no longer a state requirement, the city council at the time of the update had directed staff that we wanted to retain level of service to some level. And primarily the reason why is, as you can see from the slide, level of service is essentially a measure of roadway congestion. So, and I think many of you are more familiar with that term, given that it was the main metric in the past. So really, when you're looking at our TIA guidelines, those two are the two main study components. I think the best way to kind of look at it in a perspective is when you're looking at vehicle miles travel, you're looking at the daily operation of your vehicle, right? You might, so let's say on average, your daily travel is 10 miles per person, then that's the measurement. You are measuring how much travel you do on a daily basis. Versus level of service is really a measure of roadway congestion. So it's looking at intersection delay, it's looking at roadway delay. So when vehicle miles travel are measuring the total travel, the level of service is really a measure of how easy or difficult that travel is. For instance, maybe from your home to work, let's say it's a 10-mile travel, that's the vehicle miles travel. However, it might take, if you're in a rural area, it might take you a little less time than you're in an urban area. Let's say it takes you 30 minutes or an hour to travel that 10 miles. So really, level of service is where that component comes in. It's the measuring of congestion on the roadway. So hopefully that gives you a bit of context into those two specific metrics. Now, coming back to what tonight's item is about, as I mentioned, level of service at this point has been pretty much about vehicle travel. It's about a letter assigned to how well an intersection operates, how well a roadway operates. However, they're all in terms of vehicles. Now, in the past, when we updated when we're in the process of updating TIA guideline, we learned that the commission has an interest in exploring something similar, but for other travel modes. And hence we use the term multimodal. In this case, we're looking at not just cars, but also bike, pedestrians, transit users. Is there a way that we can potentially measure that and really put that into the TIA guideline? Because again, up until now, the TIA guideline has been more or less focused on vehicle travel. There is a section about that asks the project to talk about the other travel modes, but really not in an analytical way. It's generally looking at function and connectivity in and around the project site. So as I said earlier, tonight we're really looking for probably what I would consider step one of a multi-step process. And step one really is to identify some of the things that we're looking for if and when we want to incorporate this multimodal level of service metric into the TIA guideline. So here on your screen are some of the metrics that we could potentially explore. The study area, again, like I mentioned before, typically nowadays when you have a development project, you look at in and around the project area, and you really don't go beyond that. So is there a desire to go beyond that? The study type. So for instance, a lot of time we focus on intersection, and that's true not just for vehicles, but also we can do that for pedestrians and bicycles. But do we want to do an intersection analysis, or do we perhaps want to do a roadway segment analysis? So looking at sidewalk, looking at bike lane on a roadway basis rather than an intersection basis. Study metrics, the most easiest, I think the most fundamentally easy to grasp item would be level of service. Again, because most of us are aware of that metric. It's assigned by a letter. A, B, C, D is considered good. E or F is considered bad. They are somewhat data intensive in order to get to that point. However, it is something that is assigned to a letter and most people are familiar with. Or perhaps there's another metric that we can explore. Another metric that is fairly well known in the industry, in the transportation industry, is level of stress. I think most of you are familiar with that term as well. It is specifically assigned to bicycle, the bicycle mode. However, we can explore if that's something that we can, the commission is interested in exploring. And of course, finally, it's just the level of effort. As I mentioned earlier, this is something that I think the commission had wanted to incorporate into the TIA guideline. So what that means now is if whatever we put in there ultimately will be the responsibility of the applicant to hire a qualified consultant to do the work. And as a result of that, there'll be additional resources that is required from the applicant, but as well as on the staff end, because it will be something new that the staff will need to review as well. So we wanted to make sure that that the level of effort is properly being discussed here, because it really will be additional work on both ends, not just on one end. And of course, I'm going to conclude by just having this slides real quick. Really what we're looking for tonight, obviously an open dialogue, open discussion with the commission about what exactly the commission is looking for. What we're hoping for is also for the commission to perhaps designate a subcommittee so that we can work with staff to really get into the nuances. Again, tonight is more of a broader discussion, a broader topic. And what we're hoping for is, with the help of the subcommittee, to return to the commission with some concrete metrics, some really concrete examples as a final recommendation. So with that, I will conclude my presentation and open it up for discussion.
So at this point, we should be asking for clarifying questions, right? Okay,
Yes.
So Bill, go ahead.
So Kevin, one thing I don't understand.
Mhm.
State says you must use vehicle miles traveled. That's the required measurement of a project. But the city has directed staff to also include level of service, which I believe is just about the automobile and nothing else, how quickly the cars can move through an intersection or roadway. So my first thing is I don't understand, if the state says you have to look at vehicle miles traveled, how can the city direct staff to also include level of service?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think as it's been discussed quite a bit as well. The state certainly has their requirements. VMT is their requirement. However, when it comes to approving projects locally, the standard practice has always been that the local jurisdictions can also impose what they consider to be important for their community. So just because the state requirement is VMT, it doesn't preclude local agencies from adding or subtracting, for that matter, anything that they felt is necessary for their local jurisdictions to approve a project. So in this case, when we went to the city council for further direction, what we were told clearly by the city's council was that we still want to maintain level of service in some way. So that's why local service is being used as a local requirement. And for that reason of just allowing the city council to get additional information when they're approving a project. They wanted to know what that project would do, not just regionally, obviously, but locally in terms of congestion. So yeah.
Let me ask one follow-up question. Now that I believe we're going to have a new city council seated, do they start right away? Jen Wollison replacing or coming in, and Kat Carlton leaving?
I don't believe that's official yet, but once it's official, I believe the new city council member won't officially be seated until early next year.
I would like to see the city council revisit this whole idea of level of service, because to me, level of service is contrary to the adopted Vision Zero, the city's adopted, and the city's adopted Complete Streets. And level of service is all about moving cars quickly around town. And that works against, level of stress for cyclists and pedestrians. So if the city has adopted Vision Zero and has adopted Complete Streets, to me, they can't also require staff to look at level of service, because those are contrary. Level service is working against us becoming a multimodal city.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And if, again, this is going to probably step one of a multiple step process. So if we will ultimately come back to the commission with a final recommendation. And at that point, if there is a majority consensus that that's something that the commission as a whole wants to bring to the city council, then we can include that as part of the motion.
Yeah, because I can't see how we can get anywhere in building a true multimodal city if the city council wants staff to consider level of service. Because level of service, I recall when we were talking about, I think it was Laurel and Oak Grove, I think there was one suggestion or one design slowed down traffic by 2 or 3 seconds. Therefore, that was recommended not to put in that project, those particular improvements, because it was going to slow down the cars by like 3 seconds. So that to me is exactly what we don't want. If we're going to have a multimodal city, we can't be looking at level of service, because that's just how fast can we move cars through a road segment or through an intersection. And those are contradictory.
Yeah. No, again, I think that's a fair point. And I believe you're talking about Ravenswood and Laurel. Right. So yeah. And I think one of the reasons I think why this came up, this concept of maybe incorporating multimodal level of service, or multimodal metric. Let's not call it level of service, just a metric. Is the fact that it allows the decision makers to look at not just cars, but also what a project could do to pedestrians, bicycles, and transit users as well. And I think it does provide a valuable additional information for the decision makers if and when this multimodal metric gets put into the TIA guideline.
Thank you, Kevin.
Hey, so I should see if anybody else has any clarifying questions first. Anybody? Okay, I'm going to jump in with my own. Oh, no,
have one.
Isaac, go ahead. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. My question is for these metrics, are there any established benchmarks or baselines that are publicly available that I could look at and review for Menlo Park or any other city districts to familiarize myself more with them?
Yes. So I think if we are talking about vehicle level service, I think that's been the metric for a long time. So there's a lot of information out there. In terms of the multimodal metric, so I'm going to go ahead and say level of service for now, just because there are some industry practice out there that would allow the technical analysis of a level of service for pet, bike, and transit users, and they're being treated separately. I've been saying them together, but really you're looking at pedestrian level of service, bicycle level of service, and transit level of service. There is a industry practice out there, and I'll be, again, at the end of this item, if there is an interest by any of the subcommittees to take it on, or even form a new subcommittee, we'll be working with that subcommittee to explore any and all options. But to answer your question, Commissioner Wyatt, there is at least for now, an industry practice to calculate level of service for pet, bike, and transit. It is somewhat data intensive. When this topic first came up, staff did explore that a little bit more. We were trying to see if we could potentially incorporate that as part of the last update. However, what we learned was in order to do those calculations, they are somewhat data intensive. And given the time at that time, we were not able to incorporate that. So, but there is at least some industry practice out there that we can reference to.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, Kevin. And so just for our benefit then, is it literally called multimodal LOS? Is that what you looked at?
Multimodal LOS is the term being used for the level of service calculation. However, I think for the sake of our discussion, I am trying to not use that term. I'm trying to use multimodal metric, just because I don't want to necessarily imply that we are going down the level of service route, because there are some other metrics out there like level of stress, potentially more, that we could explore. But multimodal level of service is sort of a more well-known term at this point, just given that the methodology has been developed and is out there for people to use.
Okay, do we have other clarifying questions from anybody else? Okay, I don't see any, so I'm going to jump in with my own, which is, from what I understand, level of service as it's traditionally used is to really talk about, like, when a project is developed and is built, how much does that jam up traffic as a result, right? If we're looking at multimodal systems, if you put in a project, I don't necessarily think, I'm not sure that that's necessarily going to slow bicycles or pedestrians or public transit down in that same way, because it doesn't seem like that's going to be an impact in the same way. It seems to me that when we talk about multimodal metrics, it's more about presenting City Council or the Planning Commission with a more complete idea of how good these different networks are, the other modes of transport are to get to that project, and to highlight, like, hey, it should be really easy to get from downtown to Project X, but it's actually really hard. Take note, City Council. Is my understanding there correct, Kevin?
Yeah, I believe so. I think that that certainly could be one of the ways that we look at this ultimately. I think one of the good things that this opportunity affords us is really look at it holistically, and at least at this point, how the commission would like this metric to be studied and analyzed. So I think ultimately what you just described could potentially be one of the ways that we ask the future developers to analyze the pedestrians network, the bicycle network. So perhaps instead of looking at just a letter grade associated with a particular intersection or a particular roadway, perhaps what should be looked at is the project to certain destinations and sort of the connectivity or how well connected those destinations are. So I think it's certainly at this point, I think anything and everything could be on the table, and that could be one of them.
Okay, so kind of like a multimodal report card.
Exactly. In the past, it's always been, vehicle level service, and that's just sort of the nature of the industry at the time. And now we are kind of moving forward. There are additional things that we can look at, and this will be one of them.
Okay, well, if we don't have any more clarifying questions, I think we should move to public comment if we have any. Patrick, do we have any public comment on this item?
Thank you, Vice Chair. At this time, it doesn't look like we do. I just like to remind any of the attendees that if you do have a public comment, just use the raised hand feature and we can get to you. Or you can type it into the chat box as well and we can read that out. But no, it doesn't look like we have any public comment.
Okay, in that case, I think we can move on to commission discussion. So who wants to go first? All right, Katie.
I'll go. So I feel like Adina and I visited this with each other a while ago. I don't remember which subcommittee this would have been in the context of. And I found some great resources on the Victoria Transport Policy Institute, which I actually just emailed to Kevin so he could share with the group. And I think the big headline that we learned was, I mean, and it seems obvious, it's basically what you were saying, Lydia, that level of service is probably an inadequate, intersection level of service is probably not going to be the most useful descriptor for multimodal transit if you're talking about people on bikes and on foot, although it would be for buses, for other, motorized vehicles. But accessibility is actually really important. So you're looking at network accessibility. And I mean, right now, for example, we can talk about we know that traffic on El Camino is going to be bad, and we know that it's going to get worse when the Stanford project opens at 500 El Camino Real. And yet there's no real comfortable way right now for anybody to get to that project on a bike. Or get from that project to somewhere else. So when we're looking at projects, that would have been a good, coming up with sort of a network accessibility descriptor, are there safe pedestrian crossings? Are there undercrossings so that people don't have to walk a mile out of their way to go from the pool at Linfield Oaks to the 500 El Camino Real condos or whatever, townhouses, apartments, whatever we're calling them. Those are the kinds of metrics. And there's just, I'm not going to rehash everything that I read about, but I thought the guides from the Victoria Transport Policy Institute were really thought-provoking and interesting. And I think level of stress is good too. I don't know, off the top of my head, I hope what we could start looking toward though would be, as we've discussed before, sort of establish standards for our city so that we don't have to look at a level of stress even, we could just say I can say, my level of stress right now riding on Middlefield Road is higher than it is riding on Ringwood. And the reason is that cars on Middlefield go a lot faster and it's not a buffered bike lane. My level of stress riding on El Camino is higher still because there's no bike lane. And so I avoid that, right? And if we had sort of established city standards that we could apply and sort of roll in systematically as projects come up, when we have traffic going at speeds of 35 to 40 miles an hour, and we want to add accessibility for bikes and pedestrians, like, you know, this is the standard of crossing that we want for pedestrians, right? Like it should be signalized. And this is a standard for bike lanes that we want. It should at a minimum be buffered, but you know, if it's possible, maybe even like separated. I think that's like a direction I'd love to see us going. I don't have real thoughts about the subcommittee, except I know Adina would probably want to be part of it, and multimodal subcommittee seems like one good place to start. But the Bill Kirsch subcommittee would be another one.
Bill Kirsch doesn't want to put it in his subcommittee. I feel like the problem here is that the city council has directed staff to use level of service. And I think about the 500 El Camino project. And I guess, Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, was it the planning commission that approved that project along with city council, or they recommend to city council, yes, this design we should approve?
For 500, yeah, it ultimately requires city council approval.
Okay, but I mean, I guess it was the planning commission that did the heavy lifting to review the project. For example, there is no consideration about how those people that are working or living at 500 can get to downtown El Camino by bike or pedestrian, right? There's no safe way was accommodated. It's all about the automobile. So to me, we need to lobby the city council to do away with this notion of level of service and to really think about every project in our city as a reducing vehicle miles traveled, car traffic traveled, reduce their mileage and increase the use of cycling and walking. Because 500 El Camino, the way it's been approved, has very little or no accommodation for anything but the automobile. And I don't know where the problem resides. Is it planning commission doesn't look at anything else? And I'm not sure that having prescriptions is going to change anything. I think it's got to be done at city council level and at the planning commission level. They have to decide that they're going to incorporate ways to access these projects by bike and by pedestrian.
Bill, can I respond?
Yes, please.
And I'm going to be a little salty here.
Sure.
I feel like this is sort of like somebody saying, actually, what I really want right now is Elizabeth Warren to be president in January.
No,
So just bear with me for a sec. City council has had they had a public comment, it was agendized, like there was a whole conversation about it. And we haven't been asked tonight to weigh in on the automobile LOS thing. We've been asked to weigh in on, okay, given automobile LOS, which I agree with you is just like an outdated metric, like what are some additional metrics we can ask city council to consider that would mitigate the impact of them just looking at automobile LOS, right? Like, so what's the Biden solution here, if you will?
Well,
and that's kind of, and I think like we can actually, if we encourage council to look at, the negative impacts of projects on all these other modes, and how much scarier it is to bike and walk places when there's a lot more traffic, or how much harder it is to get somewhere in a bus if there's a lot more traffic, then I think we're gonna end up in the same general place, especially if we incorporate those metrics into the transportation impact analysis. I just worry that if we go to council and rant about LOS some more, which we've already done, then we might be delaying work on a project that's pretty important.
Katie, there's going to be a new city council seated soon, right? There's going to be a little bit of change of personnel. I'm just saying, and I think you said it there, city council needs to be lobbied to consider bikes and pedestrians in all projects. And they've directed staff to consider level of service, and that runs counter to what we're trying to do here.
I'm going to jump in and see if maybe Kevin has some thoughts on this. Kevin, if we wanted to, okay, so this is the brainstorming part of the conversation, right? If we were gonna try to affect, like change 500 El Camino retroactively, like if we if we were to go back in time, would there be something in this multimodal report card or something like that that could create more pressure to for the project to consider bike and pedestrian access to downtown?
That's a really good question, and I'm not sure if I necessarily have the answer to that question. I will say that if multimodal level service, so again, I'm talking about sort of the industry set practice for the time being. If that was available, I'm sure the developer then would have to sort of look at intersection or roadway level service for ped and bike. Not sure necessarily if that would have achieved the outcome that Commissioner Kirsch is looking for. So again, just focusing on that particular element aspect of it. I think what this practice, or at least what this agenda item tonight affords us, is the opportunity to see what type of study or metric could potentially lead to the answer that the commission as a whole wants, and maybe multimodal level of service at the intersection or roadway segment level wouldn't be adequate. Of course, and that means we're going to need to have that dialogue between the commission and staff as to then what that metric should be, and that's probably going to take some time. Obviously, it's not going to be a easy dialogue or a fast conversation, but I think what this is affording us is the opportunity to have that conversation. Yeah.
Can I jump in? And Katie, maybe this is an idea I'll throw out. I remember several years ago, we had like a joint working meeting with city council and maybe one of the other commissions. It was, maybe we could have a joint working session with city council and with the planning commission and our commission, and we can talk about this issue and kind of state, what we believe needs to be done, or we can talk about what hasn't been done with these recent projects, what we believe should have been done, and maybe what action collectively the planning commission can take, the city council can consider about how we can get better at planning these new projects so they incorporate cycling and walking. Like 500 El Camino should have incorporated safe walking and bicycle access from Stanford. And there's not really any attractive way to get to Stanford by biking or walking from the 500 El Camino project. You got to kind of wiggle around and cross El Camino. It feels dicey. So maybe a working session with these bodies might be a start.
Bill, I think there was a joint meeting between at least the bicycle and transportation committees way back when, and it had to do with Oak Grove, I think. Was that right?
Yes, there was. And I'm just thinking, let's get the planning commission together with our body and maybe city council, or maybe they can send a representative or two, and we can just hash out these issues a bit with them and talk about how we might make progress versus just going off into a subcommittee here and trying to come up with metrics. Because I feel like it needs to be attacked at a higher level so that they understand where we're coming from.
Through the vice chair, if I maybe can respond to that real quick. Yeah. And I think Commissioner Kirsch, your point is well taken. I think, a different way of kind of thinking about it is, whenever we go to the city council with a proposal, we want to make sure that is sort of, one, well thought out, two, supported by the entire commission. And I think what this project is going to afford us the opportunity of is to really sort of look at this a little bit more in depth, and looking at what exactly is the commission hoping to achieve with this effort, with this multimodal metric effort, and then being able to sort of put the commission's support and weight behind it, and then go to the city council. I certainly recognize what you're saying, because ultimately the city council will have to be the body to adopt these changes, and their willingness to adopt those changes, obviously. But even before then, I think it would be, I think it'll be much more productive if we can, at least as a commission, come up with some measurable metrics that we as a commission can support and stand behind, and that would be sort of the discussion point. I certainly recognize what you're saying in terms of let's bring the planning commission, let's bring the city council together to have that discussion, which I think is ultimately where we would head it to. But we just need to have that dialogue first about exactly what the commission is looking for first, nail that down, and then that kind of affords us to be able to go to the city council with some really clear guidance, vision, if you will, about what we're hoping to achieve with these multimodal metrics. Hopefully that makes sense. But I think what you're saying certainly makes a lot of sense. It just probably it'll probably be more beneficial to go into that conversation with something more concrete, with something that is vetted by the commission and staff first. And that way, I think it'll be a much more productive conversation at that point.
So Bill, what about, here's a thought. If we appoint a subcommittee tonight to work on this, and then the subcommittee comes back in the next meeting, which is November, right?
December.
No, December. December, sorry. December. And then at that point, we talk about it, and then it goes to we take it to Planning Commission and present it to Planning Commission. You get it on the Planning Commission agenda, or somehow, intersect with them in some formal way. And then the outcome of that then goes to City Council. Then it's like, okay, we've talked to planning about it as well, and they're on board with it, and we have their input. This is a much more powerful, we think that this is going to be useful to Planning Commission, and they think it's useful. Then it becomes a more powerful thing if we go to City Council after that.
Yeah, I think, I don't want to dominate this at all, but I feel like the main thing with every new project that we should be looking at is reducing vehicle miles traveled, like 500 El Camino. How do we minimize car traffic to and from that project? And if we do that, then we can think about as a city, okay, people need to go eat lunch. Okay, how can they walk to downtown? How can they ride their bike safely to downtown? And so those concepts get incorporated into the plan. I can't think of how we add metrics, like somebody can walk at a low stress level or bike at a low stress level. I'm just saying that if the goal should be reducing vehicle miles traveled and making it comfortable to walk and bike within the city to that project. And that should be the goal that Planning Commission has in mind when they review a project and recommend it to City Council.
All right. Does anybody else have any questions or thoughts on the topic? I can't see everybody's window thing. Let me see. Is anybody raising their hand? All right, Patrice, Michael, Isaac, no? Okay. I just thought I would.
I'll add another comment, only because I'm a little less familiar with exactly how everything gets done. But in general, in my other life, in my professional job, I love metrics, and I am sort of surprised that these are the only two metrics that are considered for these types of projects. I would hope that, and maybe there are a lot of other metrics that are considered, but I would hope that any work plan that includes transportation includes a component around how safe something is, what the accident rates for existing places are, what injuries or fatalities could or would increase as a result of these things. And I don't know if they do, maybe they do. But I would hope that as part of a multimodal transportation plan, like we are measuring supply and demand on other types of transportation methods to Bill's point, including public transit. So maybe those metrics are considered, and I'm a little surprised that only those two appear in there. So maybe this is just, my unfamiliarity with how these projects are run, but I would be very interested in seeing what the actual metrics look like to contextualize them and for my own edification. And I'd be interested in knowing what other metrics get considered as part of other work plans that get approved. So that's where my head is at. That's not a question, that's just a general comment.
I have a question. Kevin, I mean, I have sort of my own anecdotal experience of what level of stress looks like. And I remember when we were looking through the TMP a while ago, looking at the level of stress map for Menlo Park and being like, what? Like, like some of the level of stress categorizations like totally didn't map to my personal experience. And so I figured there was some algorithm that you guys were putting, like, it's like something like number of cars per day, like along a certain highway, or like the width of the road, or like, I don't know how you guys are currently categorized. Do you know, how do you calculate level of stress for a cyclist on a roadway?
Yeah, definitely. And I think part of the difficulty is also, again, it all goes back to data gathering. And we are trying to, and I very much remember the diagram that you mentioned as part of the transportation master plan. We had an exhibit, for those that are not familiar, we had a map that shows level of stress for bicyclists citywide, and it's color coded, right? So green represents a very comfortable ride. Yellow means semi-comfortable, and of course red being not very uncomfortable. And there are roadway segments that the color coding might not necessarily reflect how someone view the conditions. So maybe a roadway shows green, but someone that's more experienced that rides on it every day probably disagrees with the green assignment. Maybe they felt like it should have been yellow or red. So that kind of provide a little bit context for the new commissioners about that graphic. But to answer Commissioner Baruzzi's question, it does rely on the roadway of the speed, the width of the bike lane in this case, volume, etc. So it does require those data input. And of course, it's going to be a snapshot of a particular segment, and it's trying to represent the entire roadway. And as we all know, segment by segment, you might have a different feel to it, right? So that might just be a lack of, unfortunately, a lack of data that's available on a segment by segment basis. And I think that goes back to perhaps sort of the fundamental aspect of this conversation is that maybe that isn't a metrics that the commission wants to see study. Maybe there should be something else, perhaps like Commissioner Wyatt was talking about, maybe we want to look at safety, look at collision data at particular locations. Perhaps you identify a segment from the project to downtown. What's the easiest way to go from point A to point B, and then looking at the collision along that corridor, and then pinpoint locations that really should be improved due to the collision rate. So again, I think it goes back to what exactly would the commission like to see as part of this analysis? Yes. Sorry.
So another thought that I had was, again, I'm sort of literal in my thinking, and so I'm thinking back about El Camino and 500 El Camino Real. And I'm thinking that, like, it's already really crappy for bikes. It's not going to get worse necessarily. Like, there's going to be more traffic. It's just going to be more of the same. It's already about as bad as it could be if you're a cyclist. But if it gets worse for other vehicles, then it seems reasonable to say that a mitigation that makes it easier for people to bike or walk would enhance the space, right? Like and so it's not like saying, like, there's not going to be like a level of service change from really crappy to really crappy. Like, there's no facility there. So but adding a facility, without subtracting a traffic lane, has to make things better, right? Like it's adding another mode. And so I think I guess that's another thing to think about, right? Is not just like, what is the impact on the existing situation going to be? But, what are the mitigating factors that we can use to make it slightly less bad, or to give people slightly more options? And I don't know what to call that, but maybe it's just network connectivity. It's getting back to sort of accessibility and like enhanced accessibility for other modes. Or like, it's the adding an express bus lane to El Camino thing that we keep talking about. It's like the holy grail, is another one of those sorts of things, right? Like right now, it's terrible to be in a bus on El Camino during rush hour. Like it doesn't go any faster than anything else. But I guess those are the kinds of things that I feel like we should be throwing into the hopper.
Katie, that's a great point. I wanted to follow up on that. On 500 El Camino, it's almost like the developer presents a project to the city, to the planning commission. There should also be a parallel effort to say, okay, this is going to, if we don't plan otherwise, it's going to dump a ton of new traffic and make the city worse to live in. So let's figure out, now that we're working on this approval of this project, how can we reduce the number of car trips and increase the number of bike and pedestrian trips? And then we could think about where people are going to go, where are they coming from, where are they going to go to, where are they going to eat lunch, all those kinds of things. And then it's almost like a separate plan for connectivity to and from that project all day long, with the goal being minimize car trips and maximize foot and bicycle trips. Because if we can maximize those, we're going to reduce congestion potentially. Because I feel like it's all about, okay, we're throwing this project up, we're building a bunch of car parking. How do we minimize, how do we speed up car traffic? And there's, as far as I can tell, no accommodation in that 500 project, or very little, for walking and biking to actually get from here to there. Oh yeah, they widen the sidewalk along that stretch, but how does somebody walk downtown? Can they walk comfortably downtown? Not really. And there's been no accommodation for that.
So discussion has been going for some time, and I'm wondering if now is a good time to create that subcommittee to work on this. Does anybody have, well, I guess there's two ways to go about it. We could form a new subcommittee, or we could assign it to an existing subcommittee. Kevin, am I correct in understanding that?
Yes, I think that's fair. That's a fair assessment right there. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen with the commission here. This is just a quick snapshot of all the subcommittees we have.
Okay, so the multimodal subcommittee is just Jackie and Adina right now. So, but Bill, it sounds like there's quite a bit of interest on your part, and maybe Katie as well, on working on this, and maybe Isaac. So we could form a subcommittee, and then if anybody else wanted to join, like say if Adina wanted to join, could she do that retroactively, or we'd have to add her in November?
Yeah, just because Commissioner Levin's not here, we will probably have to do it retro when she's available and present, to have her join the subcommittee. If we decided to, as a whole, to create a new subcommittee just for this item.
Right, or we could add people to the existing subcommittee, and that would be up to how many people?
4 total.
4 total. Okay, well, I guess I should ask then, is anybody who is currently present interested in working on this topic? Okay, we got Katie. Bill, you're not raising your hand?
Well, my interest would be, if I had my way and this fell into my lap, I would want to get a subcommittee from the city council, maybe 1 or 2 representatives, and then a subcommittee from planning, and just have some brainstorming sessions about how can we make future projects multimodal? Because the city has said they want Vision Zero. The city has said they want complete streets, but we don't seem to design that way with these new projects. So I'd want to start there. That would be where I'd want to start. Have brainstorming sessions. How can we improve this planning process with each new project so that we reduce car traffic and we increase cycling and pedestrian access? Just brainstorming. And then from there, maybe go into a subcommittee working group.
Okay, well, I don't necessarily think that if you, so say if the existing multimodal subcommittee decided that they wanted to interface with the subcommittee on the planning commission side, there's nothing preventing the multimodal subcommittee from doing so, right? Kevin?
Right, no, not, yeah. And this particular item was sort of directed by the city council to be looked at by the Complete Street Commission as well. So I think that certainly, the city council is aware of the fact that the Complete Street Commission will be taking this on. And so with the subcommittee, I think it's certainly well within the right or power to reach out to the planning commission. We might have to talk to the city clerk about this offline just to make sure that we are not violating any Brown Acts, but just off the top of my head, I don't see that as a problem.
Okay, so if I made a motion to add Commissioner Bayrouzi and Commissioner Kirsch to the multimodal subcommittee, would that work as a motion?
I'm not super comfortable with that.
Okay.
I'm really not. I think that the intent of the multimodal subcommittee was actually different from what we're talking about here. It's true that the words multimodal show up in both of these topics, but the multimodal subcommittee was about regional transit, if memory serves. And neither of those members is here. And I feel like it's a little weird to like change the focus of their subcommittee for this kind of ad hoc item. I feel more comfortable with either creating an ad hoc subcommittee or throwing this into like active transportation augmented by, I actually thought Patrice had also joined the Active Transportation Network subcommittee already. Am I wrong?
That's the next item. We'll make it official, but
Oh, okay.
it's unofficial. But the
Anyway,
next
I have a strong feeling that Adina is going to want to have a hand in this. I'm very interested in it, but I'm fine not being part of it if there's a quorum or a subcommittee that feels excited about it. But I would feel weird changing an existing subcommittee without the two members being here.
Okay, fair enough. I was just trying to figure out how to get Commissioner to Chair Levin onto the subcommittee, because I know this is of great interest to her.
Does the subcommittee have to be identified tonight, Kevin?
It doesn't have to be identified tonight. We as a commission, we have the power to add and subtract members. It does have to be done in a public setting. So
Yeah.
perhaps what I would recommend is we can always recommend, creating a new subcommittee just for this task, with the understanding that the subcommittee members will reach out to Commissioner Levin to see if she's interested. I think, there's enough evidence among staff and the commissioners to know that Commissioner Levin is indeed interested in this item. So we can certainly include that. So that way the subcommittee can get a head start. We don't have to wait until the next meeting to add Commissioner Levin to the group.
Okay, Bill.
Kevin, does the city council has subcommittees, right?
I believe they do, yes.
Do they have like a Vision Zero subcommittee or a multimodal subcommittee?
I am not aware of a multimodal subcommittee. I'm not sure if they have a Vision Zero subcommittee either. I can go back and check with the city clerk.
Because I guess my approach would be, again, before we go off in a vacuum and come up with metrics, that we should have this subcommittee, whoever it's composed of, should have a joint meeting with representatives from the planning commission and, a non-Brown Act violating group of city council people, one or two, and have a brainstorming session or two to kick off this effort. Because I feel like anything else, we're just going to go off in a vacuum to come up with metrics. But really, this is all about planning and planning commission approving projects, city council approving projects that have no accommodation for cycling and walking. And so I feel like a study session, brainstorming, where they understand our viewpoint and we can get suggestions as to how to tackle this. And then our subcommittee can come back and work on something.
Yeah. I think that's a good recommendation, that perhaps if we form a new subcommittee, that subcommittee could reach out to, at a minimum, a commission liaison to the city council, which would be City Council Vice Mayor Combs, I believe. Yes, Vice Mayor Combs is our complete street commission liaison to the city council. So I think that's certainly
just a sign, because it was Betsy Nash, right?
Yeah, Betsy Nash was last year, and then every year they rotate, and Vice Mayor Combs volunteer for the role this year. I think one thing I will say is that when we went to the city council with the previous update, this particular topic was brought up, and the city council voted to essentially defer this to the complete street commission. So their understanding is that if and when this item gets picked up, the complete street commission would take sort of, for the lack of a better word, take a first stab at coming up with what they think would be the most valuable use of time and a metric in this case. So I certainly understand the desire and the need, for that matter, to bring in the city council as soon as possible. And I think that's a good recommendation would be, for the subcommittee to reach out to Vice Mayor Combs and see, maybe get some guidance on how the city council would like to proceed with this. But I think at this moment in time, the city council is aware of the topic from the last time we went to them, and they directed staff to work with the commission on this. So they are aware of sort of the trajectory and sort of at least provided that first step as to how this item should be assessed.
So it's sounding to me that if the subcommittee can do either of the things, they can either take an initial stab and provide something for members of the Planning Commission and City Council to react to, or they can reach out ahead of time to see if they have any ideas, right? So it sounds like the first thing to do would be to create that subcommittee, however. Does anyone have a motion?
Is there anybody else here who's currently in this meeting who wants to touch this with a 10-foot pole, or is it really just me and possibly Bill? I'm seeing a negative from Mike Meyer, Patrice.
I am interested in the topic. I guess I'm because I'm new to the commission, I'm surprised that this kind of thing is not part of the normal process for approving projects. So I feel like I need to do a little bit more research. Like, I'm kind of shocked that this wouldn't have already been in place. So yeah, I'm happy to get involved. I am on 2 other commissions, and I would like to put some energy into those. And so that's kind of why I'm not speaking up on this particular one.
Isaac, Lydia.
I'm happy to make up a 4th if
Lydia, I think Kevin, I term out in April or March, something like that.
Give me 1 second. Let me see if I can get that information quickly.
It feels like the most natural home for this would either be in the Active Transportation Network Subcommittee or the Transportation Master Plan Subcommittee, which is going to kind of sunset anyway because the TMP, knock on wood, will be like approved, and then we're kind of going to be done with that topic. Active Transportation Network Subcommittee includes Patrice and Bill, and could include 2 more people. TMP was me and Adina, and could include, you know, we could just, I don't know.
To answer Commissioner Kurtz's question, you term out April of next year.
April 2021.
Yeah.
I have
Yep.
maybe 4 more meetings, something like that. Okay.
Yes.
So this suggests to me, Bill, that you should definitely be on whatever this effort is. It could be a great way to leave the
I think I'm better as a
on a high point.
I can go back to being an activist.
I feel like there's like a kamikaze analogy that I don't want to make for all kinds of reasons. Bill, do you want to just take this into your subcommittee and expand it in the next meeting, but depending on who else is interested?
Well, I mean, I've stated where I would like the effort to go. I don't want to go off and come up with some kind of metrics then get put on the shelf and Planning Commission just ignores when they look at the next project. I'm not sure how to start it off other than to get the, other bodies within our broader government together to talk about this issue, because, we've approved, the city has adopted Vision Zero. It has adopted Complete Streets, yet look at the mess that gets approved and with no accommodation for Complete Streets or Vision Zero. And Vision Zero, the city doesn't have to do anything for 20 years, right? Because the goal is 2040. So I feel like we just need to bring the other constituents together for some initial brainstorming and get the Planning Commission and the City Council to understand that they're approving projects that are not aligned with Vision Zero or Complete Streets. And how can we change that in the future? Is it metrics or is it something else?
Okay, so Bill, it sounds like there might be a little reluctance to do this one. Is that what I'm hearing?
I would love to do it, but I don't want to, I maybe have a different approach. I'm not running for reelection in April, so I'm kind of saying the way what I believe is that I wouldn't want to go off and come up with metrics. I think what's important is it's sort of project by project, and it's the thinking and attitude at the Planning Commission level of what they approve and what they submit to City Council. And if they haven't ingested the concepts of reducing vehicle trips and improving pedestrian and bicycle access with projects that they approve and then take to council, we're not going to get anywhere. So the change has to happen, I guess it has to be a higher level change. And then within planning, that they take on this concept of reducing, they look at a plan, they say, how can we reduce car trips? How can we improve bicycle and pedestrian access? And that's not being done now.
I think that's what we're talking about, though. Right now, when Planning Commission looks at projects, they look at environmental impact and they look at level of service and vehicle miles. They will get vehicle miles traveled. And so what the City Council is saying is, okay, if you want other considerations, Complete Streets Commission, and we think there should be other considerations, let's create those so that we, the City Council, can approve them, and those can be officially added into the way the Planning Commission reviews projects and then City Council reviews projects. It's just like we have to create those, we have to create the additional metrics, right? Like we can't just, and I don't think like having a larger brainstorming session than the one we have right now is going to yield like a more clear-cut result. I think it's probably good to start smaller after people have done some research and some homework and said, well, here's what they do in these 5 cities, and here are the pros and cons, and here's how much work it takes. And then we bring it to the commission, and then the commission has their discussion. And then I think it has to proceed in kind of an orderly way. I think we're going to get to the same place. Like, I know where I like your end vision. It's just that I think that I don't think having a big meeting with 20 people is going to get us there.
Katie, I'm not talking about a meeting with 20 people. It could
I
be,
know,
it could
okay.
be 2 city council people and 2 planning commission people and 2 or 3 of us. That's a reasonable working group. Like, Katie, think about it. We've already, the city has adopted Vision Zero. Is 500 El Camino a Vision Zero project? No. We've adopted Complete Streets as a design guiding principle. Is 500 El Camino, is there a complete street envisioned within that project? No, there's not. Why not?
Because they aren't tagged to development projects the way level of service and VMT are. So this is our chance to suggest adding to development considerations, like explicitly at the project level instead of at the citywide proclamation level. You know, this is how, you know, to move forward on a project. These are the 3 things we want you to look at instead of these are the 2 things, right? So I think I don't know. You might be more optimistic than I am about like the level of grassroots effort we can expect from council. My sense is that they're massively overcommitted as it is. I don't know. It would be great if we could get council input at the ground level and planning commission input. I agree with the vision. I just don't know if it's practical. Kevin, you know more about this.
Let me just interject something. The way we got Oak Grove El Camino project done was we actually, we developed a concept plan and we took it around individually to city council members. I remember visiting several of them, presenting it to them. And then we went to several different commissions. The whole idea was that we communicated with a broader group than just ourselves during the process. And I'm just saying, I'm not saying we need heavy lifting from city council. I just feel like there needs to be an initial brainstorming session so that we can air what we see as deficiencies in the planning process, and then get suggestions on how can we get planning to incorporate these other considerations, bikes and pedestrians, minimizing traffic.
Okay, so I think what I hear you saying is whoever's on the subcommittee should be talking with planning commissioners and talking with council members as part of their planning process for creating whatever they bring back to the commission. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
That makes sense. Okay, that makes sense. That doesn't seem unreasonable.
For the vice chair, I can provide a little bit more context as well. I think ultimately we're all saying the same thing. The city council recognizes the need for it, and that's why, as part of their motion in the past, was to direct city staff to work with the Complete Street Commission on this matter. And so I think there is a recognition from the city council that more needs to be done. And sort of to tie in what Commissioner Kirsch and Baruzzi was talking about, what in order for us to ask the developers to study what we want them to study, it needs to be written down somewhere. And I think that's where Commissioner Baruzzi was pointing to, is that this effort will allow us to have those words into a document where we are telling the developers, hey, you need to go ahead and study this. And I think to Commissioner Kirsch's point, we have Vision Zero, we have Complete Street, but in his eyes, 500 doesn't satisfy those requirements. And one of the reasons is because there aren't anything specific that tells them what to do. And I think this right here offers the opportunity. This right here offers the opportunity for the commission to see exactly how it should be studied or what should be studied in this case. And I think since there's already a recognition from the city council that more could be done and more needs to be done, I think right now we're at a good place where, if there's a desire from the commission to further explore this, that we have this opportunity to. And to Commissioner Wyatt and Espinosa's point about, they were surprised that, this is not something that's already readily looked at. Well, that just that's just a matter of matter of course that's where we are. And again, I would suggest that if those are something that either one of them are interested in learning, I think this would be a good opportunity to join that group. And sounds like maybe it might be easier to just create a new subcommittee rather than trying to pick and choose which existing subcommittee would be best for the role. Perhaps it would be cleaner and easier for us to just go and create a new subcommittee for this endeavor. And I think this will be a good learning opportunity for all of us, really, is to look at it.
I'd also say it's a good time for all these people who are just starting. This is just the tip of the iceberg of things that you don't realize are already covered and joining. I'm joining Bill in April of terming out. So I'm on the ramp down for all of this stuff as well. These are the things you guys should all be jumping. Everybody who's new should just be jumping on this stuff and loading up, because nothing's going to get done if you're going to wait a year to get ramped up.
All right, do I have a motion? Oh, sorry.
It was stated earlier that, I don't remember who stated it, that this is something that Chair Levin would be interested in. And I know that Katie has provided a lot of perspective in this conversation on this. And so it's just a question, not an idea, but would it be inappropriate for this to be something that the Transportation Master Plan Subcommittee addresses? I don't know exactly what the charter of that subcommittee is, but those are two people who have perspective on this. And if that's an appropriate subcommittee, I would consider joining that subcommittee to help out with this effort.
I think that's probably going to be a subcommittee that we sunset because of, it was really designed for that very specific purpose of supporting the effort to get the Transportation Master Plan done. And I think City Council is going to be reviewing that like this month, right, Kevin?
In end of the year, I think either this month or next month.
Yeah, so we probably don't need to, we could just create a new subcommittee, like you and I could be in it, and we can add Adina if she wants to be in it, and we can, or if somebody else wants to, I'm happy to stand back. I don't think you need Mike?
No, I'd say I'd move to create a new subcommittee so we can move on to the next item.
That's what I'm saying. Let's create a subcommittee.
I'll move to create the new subcommittee that this is going to be dealt with under name to be determined.
No, we should call it that 8 or 10 word. What's the name of Kevin's presentation?
What do we call it?
How about the multimodal report card?
Multimodal report card.
Great.
Yes. So moved.
Great. Multimodal. I'll second it.
All right. All those in favor of creating the new multimodal subcommittee, raise your hand. All right. I think that's a unanimous 6-0 for those who are present. All right.
Thank you. And can we, is there a desire from any commissioners to join that subcommittee?
Oh, yes, that's right.
Yes. The subcommittee is created, but right now member count is 0.
All right.
Come on, Isaac.
I'm more than happy to join it with participation from an experienced leader on the Complete Streets Commission.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like we need somebody who's been through this before. So I'm willing to be on it as well if we have some leadership.
I'll be a placeholder, and if it turns out that Adina wants to take my spot, then I will cede that to her. Okay.
So if I'm hearing correctly, we have Commissioner Wyatt and Commissioner Baruzzi and Commissioner Espinoza interested in joining the subcommittee. We do have 4 spots. So if Chair Levin wants to join and Commissioner Baruzzi decided to join as well, I think we're more than okay to have 4 subcommittee members.
And Sebrian might want in on this as well, right? So
That's true.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Do we have to vote on those nominations to that subcommittee? No, we don't.
Yeah, maybe just a raise of hands. Let's just go ahead and do that just for
Okay,
clarification. You never know,
right.
right? So,
Every-
okay. Well, we'll call it unanimous.
yes.
Yes.
All right. Where are we? D4, evaluates the commission subcommittees.
Yes. Thank you. So I think this is just a housekeeping item just to nominate Commissioner Espinoza to the Active Transportation Network Subcommittee. And so unless there's any other discussions or questions, be happy to entertain a motion, a second, and a vote.
Okay, I have moved to add Commissioner Espinoza to the Active Transportation Subcommittee.
A second.
All right, all those in favor?
I vote for myself.
Yes, we'll call it unanimous.
Oh, yeah, unanimous. Great.
Great.
All right, moving on to informational items. Informational items are transmitted to the commission and staff's effort to provide an update on matters of importance to the commission. Informational items are not action items. However, a commission, city staff member, or member of the public may request to make a comment or ask a question on any of the informational items. So that's you, Kevin, right?
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair Lee. Just a few quick announcements. They're all upcoming projects and subsequent meetings, etc. So for the Transportation Management Association, that would be the TMA effort. Staff is planning on coming to the commission next month, so that's December, with essentially a draft recommendation for the TMA. So I think that one would be a really good one for the commission to listen and provide feedback on. Also, the TMP, the Transportation Master Plan, is set to go to the City Council for adoption on next Tuesday, actually. So that will be November 17th. I'm sure the staff report will be coming up toward the end of this year, end of this week. So I'll make sure to share that with the commission when it is available. Also, the Ravenswood and Laurel intersection, that particular item is set to go to the City Council the beginning of next month. So that will be Tuesday, December the 8th. And with that, I will conclude my update.
Oh, Bill has a question.
Kevin, that last item, Ravenswood, what was it? Ravenswood,
And
Laurel?
Laurel? Yeah.
What are you presenting to the city council? Is it the plan that we saw because I can't remember what, we had suggestions. I don't know what ended up being approved or developed by staff.
Right. So I don't have the details of the final recommendation, but ultimately what will be going to the city council would be essentially a recommended design for that particular intersection. So again, I'll make sure that when the staff report is published and available, I'll make sure to share that with the commission. So for those interested, you can take a look at it. But to answer your question, what's going to the city council would be a recommended design for that intersection.
And does it incorporate any of the suggestions that we had as a commission body? Because we saw that, didn't we?
Yeah, so the commission saw that and provided comments. Unfortunately, I don't have the details, so I don't know unfortunately, I don't know the answer to that question. I think it's going to be, I guess I would just say that we wait for the staff report to be published, and then we'll be learning that through that staff report.
I really hope they had the bicycle ramps that you could jump that I suggested to put in there. That would be awesome.
Yes.
Stay tuned for that one.
Kevin, I had one more question. In the city council meeting recently where they discussed city speed limits, there's a desire from the council to, I guess the council directed staff to come back with a plan to reduce traffic speeds on Middle Avenue.
Right.
What is the status of the staff's effort to come back to council with a plan to do that?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So that all ties back to the personnel request that I mentioned a little bit earlier during this meeting. Basically, at the last city council meeting, staff went to the city council again, I'm just referencing the transportation division at this point, is to request 2 additional staff members. And those staff members would be tasked to work on both the Ravenswood grade separation project as well as the Middle Avenue project. And like I mentioned earlier, that particular element of that item was tabled to a future date. So at this point, the answer to your question would be, well, we're gonna have to wait until the city council takes back on that particular request to be able to give you a bit more information. But I think what I can say at this moment in time is that the advancement of those 2 projects are tied to those personnels. So basically, we need those 2 additional positions to be able to work on those projects right away.
Kevin, following up on that, the section of Middle from University to El Camino, I understand the speed limit is going to be reduced to 25 miles an hour.
I believe so. Yes, that's going down.
Any planning now that will put bike lanes and better pedestrian access on that strip? On that?
Just for that segment?
Yes.
Yeah, not at this moment in time. So the speed limit is strictly just lowering the speed limit. I think the bike lane would essentially be most likely be tied into that Middle Avenue effort that you have just spoke of. Because essentially the bike lane would be assessed alongside any traffic calming measures that's going to come out of that project.
Final question. Middle Avenue. I understand that there is a citizen that put forth a very detailed plan for Middle Avenue to reduce speeds, automobile speeds, to improve crossing, to add bike lanes, and to improve pedestrian access.
Yep.
Is city staff doing anything with that plan right now?
So that plan will be part. So depending on the personnel, obviously, if and when that project moves forward, that plan will be assessed, evaluated, and be looked at as part of the overall and totality of that project. Yes. So we're aware of the document that you mentioned, and it will be assessed when that project is ready to go.
Okay, so that's going to have to wait for these new staff people?
Yeah.
Okay, and the new staff people have to wait for the city council to revisit that topic.
Right, which is tentatively most likely set for beginning of this next year, just given the amount of time that's left for this year, plus the number of items that the city council already have on their plate for the remainder of this year.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I don't see any raised hands from members of the public, so I'm assuming there are no further questions on this item. Okay, so moving forward, then we have updates on major project status, and that goes to Kevin.
I believe that was it.
Oh, that was it. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So now,
One more question.
go ahead, Bill.
What is the status of the undercrossing, or my favorite topic?
So the undercrossing, right now we're still waiting to see if we were successful at the 2 grants that we asked for. One was the TA, the Measure A and W. Unofficially, off the record, I think we have been selected to receive that grant, so that's good news for us. We are still waiting for results for the ATP grant. So that the ATP grant should be the one that hopefully, if we were successful, would substantially cover the remainder of the budget request. So
the full budget to build out the undercrossing?
for the design and construction. Yeah. So currently all the money and funding resources that we're looking for will go towards both the final design and the construction of the project.
And when do you expect to hear from that ATP or whatever that was?
Yeah, ATP, I believe it's going to be early next year. I believe February of 2021 is when we're expecting to know the results.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think we have finally reached F, which is committee and subcommittee reports. So do we have any updates from our subcommittees? Should I just go down the list, Kevin?
Yes, please. I think that would be best.
Okay, so we've got the Active Transportation Network Subcommittee.
No update.
Okay, the Climate Action Plan Subcommittee. Climate Action Plan.
I don't know of any update. We haven't met.
Okay, Downtown Access and Parking Subcommittee.
We're gonna meet when Adina gets back in early December.
Okay, Multimodal Subcommittee has neither member present, so I'm going to skip that one.
Wait, can we just say, did everybody see that Measure RR passed? And that Adina was kind of living and breathing that effort for like months. So if you see her again, drop her a line or something. I think she was
Not an effort.
probably one of a handful of people who were most responsible for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it helped alleviate 15 not passing in terms of sorrow.
All right, kudos to Measure RR passing. Safe Routes to School Program Subcommittee. I have no updates. Katie, do you know anything that's going on with Safe Routes to School?
No, just that we need to meet. Ruby Bridges is coming up.
Very soon.
Yeah.
Very soon. Okay. Transportation Master Plan Subcommittee. Okay, Zero Emissions Subcommittee. That's you, Michael.
Nothing.
Okay, well, if that is it, then I think we have reached H, which is our official adjournment. Kevin, did I leave anything out?
No, I think we're good. Thank you very much, Vice Chair, for
Yeah.
tonight.
All right, well, I want to thank Kevin and Patrick for staying up late with us. It's 9:01. Yay. Okay, meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Good night.
Everybody.
Thank you all.